Hello, Matthias.
Hello.
On here.
I'm hoping we're getting more people here.
Yeah, so do I. Erik, hi. Hello, Erik. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Andrea, great.
Hello. Shall we wait another minute and then get started?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Let's start sharing the notes. Okay, I guess it's 3 past. Maybe we should get started. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah, let's start.
All right, we have a few things on the agenda for today. If there is anything else that you would like to discuss, please add it to the agenda, or if anything that you should discuss first, please let me know. So just follow the order. Okay, first item is a reminder that the FOSDEM call for participation open today. Oh,
yeah, I added that on request from Tracy. It should have been open today, but I can't really see it, unfortunately. So I don't think they have really yet opened it. The dev rooms are defined, but it's not open for submissions yet. So maybe it will be later today, but I guess the idea for lifting it here is that we should be aware of it and prepare for any presentations that we could provide there. The deadline for, I don't know if there is a deadline for sending in the CFPs, but at least last December, the schedule will be completed. So for sure before that at least. So I guess we might only have like 2 weeks or something. Is someone up to presenting something on FOSDEM? I haven't myself decided if I really am able to go, but I think I could go. It's online.
Sure.
I would be sort of interested in that. I guess I would need to read more about what dev rooms actually exist, but if we find something suitable, it would be willing to participate.
There is a CI/CD dev room. I think it's called something like CI/CD. Let's see.
Well, that seems highly suitable then. So, yeah.
Yeah. Continuous integration and continuous deployment. Deployment, they say, not delivery. anyway.
Close.
Yeah, I think we presented there last year, maybe 2 years, 2 years ago. Not 2 years ago, at least I was there for a Tecton presentation. So, but that's definitely a relevant track for us. Yeah, I'd be happy to present as well. But yeah, I mean, we could co-present, or could work together in a submission. If that's something, we can take it also offline, Eric, if you want. I can ping you.
Sounds good.
I'm at least happy to do a review if you want some help in that area. I can't guarantee today that I can spend time on actually creating presentation, but I can probably review it. But shouldn't we have a discussion on Slack maybe when it's out there, so we can have more a decision on how to proceed. So the first one who sees that the dev rooms have opened for CFPs can post it on Slack.
All right. Yeah, I think it would be nice probably to announce the project at least. We'll probably have a logo by then and see. Yeah,
timing wise, it seems to be exactly in line with when we wanted to go out a bit broader, because this is early February, I believe. So it might be a really good fit schedule wise.
Yeah, I think that's why we mentioned it as well on the SIG meeting last week, that it's due to the good timing, it would be good for us to go there. I'm not sure if the presentations, they should of course be recorded in advance then, since it's online. So I'm not sure how early we can have something to show from our progress.
Yeah, I would still claim that having something like this and having the intention to present something is a good focus thing, like, getting us to actually push through some stuff. So I see this as positive. I think they mentioned on their webpage that actual presentations would be pre-recorded, but the Q&A sessions afterward would be live, something like that. But that's quite good, I guess. Oh, come on.
Great.
But there is nothing like discussion rooms or birds of a feather or anything like that in Fosten, right? There's always presentations and maybe some discussions in the end.
As far as I know, yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have anything like birds of a feather sessions or just plain discussion rooms. I've always been to presentations there. I mean, when it was in person, it's nice that you can meet the people and have discussions in the corridors, but the virtual format is not very good for that. So. Okay, well, I guess we'll keep an eye on the space, and hopefully the CICD dev room will be open soon. Anything else on Fosten? move to the next topic. I added a list of PRs on the CD event spec repo to discuss about. The first one is the one from Steve with the code of conduct, which is merged now. I approved it. Yeah, if anyone has any concern, please let me know. Still modified. I also added a PR for a markdown linter, which is also merged. That's a GitHub action. Basically uses the GitHub super linter action, which is that it runs on every PR that we make and checks that markdown is well formatted. That's about it. I thought it was straightforward, so just went ahead and put it so we could delete the upcoming PRs. But if anyone has any concern with this, let me know.
Sounds good.
Great. Next one, I created a PR for Bootstrap governance for the project. And that's taken from the, I used as inspiration the Bootstrap governance that we had a few years back in Tecton. So I wanted to ask folks to review it. And also, for now, I set our names here as like initial Bootstrap governance for the project. Simply because including Steve, who is not here today, but I think we are the circle of folks that were actually active on this discussion on this work. But if anyone thinks they would not like to be in the governance of the project, or they're not here and they would like to be, we can discuss it and change it. Anyway, I just wanted to set up something and to get some feedback and hear what people's thoughts are.
I think it's a very good initiative, Andrea, that you started this. And yeah, I think the list initially looks good of people. I don't know if you should reach out on Slack and see if someone else wants to be involved in the Bootstrap committee. Yeah, I guess for the final committee we might not be that many, but for the Bootstrap it's maybe good to have a broad baseline of people. Or at least we are from 4 different companies here.
Yes, indeed. So it's a good mix.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so it's really copied from Tecton 1, and apart from the list of names, the commit must represent the cross-interest of a section of interest, balance technical architecture and governance expertise, and hold staggered terms. So after this, then the Bootstrap committee is responsible for setting up the election process and scheduling and running the election for the next committees, and set up the charter for the project. Yeah, so it's going to be a transition process, and defining the contribution process as well is responsibility of the initial committee. So say, what are the roles for the contributors to the project? And I mean, this is probably going to be relatively straightforward. It's a relatively small community, but there are a few things like, okay, do we want to have CLA enforcement, for instance? The code of conduct is already there. Conduct is already there, thanks to Steve. And initially, the members of the committee would be responsible for responding to any code of conduct violations. I created a Google group and then once we merge these, I can add folks to the group. Possibility of the committee is also defining the project communication channels, even though we already mostly talked about those, and I think we won't be too much to be discussed here. And permission and access, and members of the governance board are going to be administrators of the Google groups and administrators of the GitHub org. Yeah.
Should we state something about a milestone or when some, I don't know, deadline, but when we aim to have the Bootstrap committee concluded and replaced with a real committee, or maybe that's a separate topic and shouldn't be really part of this? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we could.
I guess it would be good for us in the Bootstrap committee then to have some kind of deadline to work against at least. But maybe it doesn't need to be part of this document.
Yeah, it could be part of the Bootstrap committee to define that. But if you have some idea of what you think we would like it to be, we can include it here in the initial description.
I think it shouldn't take too long before we replace it with the real one, but of course we shouldn't stress it either. It should be done in a good way, and depends on, I guess, how much effort we can spend here, how quickly we can prepare everything that is needed. And maybe related to that is, I mean, now we are 4 of the persons there are in Europe time zone, and 1 is in Western America. If it's easier to find a time slot, if we should discuss these things more regularly or more frequently, that would maybe be beneficial to be able to have it in daytime, so to say, in European time zone. But maybe that's not possible since Steve is in the list then as well. What do you think about that? Of course, when we come to the real committee, we shouldn't have such an exclusion rule or something like that. I was just thinking if that's valuable to make this maybe progress faster, hopefully.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, I don't want to stop Steve from being part of it. That's not at all what I'm saying, but I'm just thinking not bad.
Yeah, I don't mind either way. I don't feel too much pressure in having this moving swiftly forward, because I think I would like the focus of the group to be on actually moving forward with the content rather than the governance part. But so I wouldn't mind if this takes a bit longer on my side. But
yeah, if you look at how Open Telemetry did it, they had it set up very specific, like how long the initial committee and governing structures are in place, what type of voting structures that they had. So I think they have defined it pretty well. And I mean, they have like really put a lot of time and effort in defining it. I think you need at least half a year realistically, because usually, depending on how you structure it, you might want to put in there that only people can be there for governance vote to have a relevant number of contributions, which depending on how you define it, like 20 contributions, which might either be PR or docs, or whatever it is. So they're willing to run, and you have to give people time to actually reach that level. So if you would do it in 2 or 3 months, it would be very hard to make this possible. However, if you give them 6 months, you would assume that most people actually get a fair chance to contribute to a level where they would be eligible to also participate in this kind of like voting activity, and they refill their prerequisites. Because what you usually want to avoid, honestly, is to just people saying, I want to be in a governance board, and they have never done anything with the project or not really spent a lot of time on it. I'm trying to find it.
I totally agree as well there, Alois. So I think half a year is a decent timeline for this, I would say.
Yes,
So maybe we could aim for having something in place before the summer or something, and then the new committee could start right after the summer next year or something.
Yeah, I pasted in here. That's the full version of the governance committee charter for open telemetry.
I could also vote for not stressing things. Then the question is how much time should you spend on this meeting, or should we push it over to the SIG if there are people in the official SIG meeting that are interested in these things? Thinking out loud here.
Good idea. Yeah, good idea, Matthias. We shouldn't spend too much time on this meeting for these more administrative discussions, maybe.
Yeah, I think what is so important and is really the outreach program. Like, how do we get more people like to join in? Like GitLab, others who should be part of this and really actively engage with them. I think that would be super important to really ensure that you have the proper momentum on the project. As you said, like the initial governance bootstrap committee just gets most of the work for setting everything up properly to then eventually leave it for the elected members later on, so they get the hard work first.
Yeah, whatever the bootstrap committee doesn't finish, the real committee needs to do.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of work, but the bootstrap committee just takes care that everything is in place so people can actually start working and define the initial direction of the project. That's also why, like posting the open telemetry one, you usually have an overlap. Like how many people of the bootstrap committee you keep in there, because you don't want to always vote the entire committee, because you want to have some continuation. If you would do, say, annual or biannual votes, then more or less, if always the people changes, then you would have no continuation in there. That's why there's always usually a couple of seats up for voting. Initially, it's just adding people to the initial bootstrapping committee, and then it's gradually people not having their term ending, but obviously they can run again if they really want to. So that's why. Yeah, that's what I find good. The one that OpenTelemetry really uses. I think it's pretty similar to what Kubernetes uses as well. I think that's why they originally.
How we do it in Tecton as well. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that sounds good. But I think we should then adjourn this discussion to the SIG meeting next week and continue on in the agenda now. But it's very good input, Alois.
Yes. All right. Let's not spend more time on that. Okay. Just quickly then the rest of the PRs. The first one, it's basically I imported the spec from the SIG events, the draft spec, into the new spec repo with basically no change except for some linting and typos. So I think it would be good to merge the version as it is now in the new repo and then start working on it or add to it as we discuss new things. In the next one, I added as just stubs, but for two documents. One is the cloud events binding, which is where we should define how the events that we define in the spec map to cloud events in terms of header and body payload. And that's the part of the spec that will be used to build or update the SDK as well. And the other document is the primer, which is inspired to what Cloud Events did. And it's basically an overview of the spec where we define kind of the goals that we want to achieve, writing the spec, what is the architecture or the design principles. And I think it's a very good document to have because then we can capture there the kind of discussion we are having in this meeting about the different type of events that we want. Do we want to have links or not links? Do we want to have context and those kind of discussions. I think it's good to capture them in this primer document. Now they're just steps, but I think it's good to have them in the repo so we can add them to them incrementally. And also I wanted to ask if anyone is interested in looking into the cloud events binding specifically. Okay. Sounds like not particularly now, but okay. Okay, well, if you want to have a look at the PRs, please let me know the votes. It should be possible to merge these relatively quickly apart from the governance ones that we can discuss at the next meeting then on Monday. Anything else on PRs or repo? Or... All right.
Good to get started. So good work.
Yeah, it's great. I guess just one comment that maybe is that, I mean, the owner of the repo is currently me and you, Andrea, and I don't think we added someone else, right? But we should probably have that, but that's also for the SIG to discuss, I guess. But the Bootstrap committee should be probably owners of this repo. But we can talk about that more in the SIG meeting, guys. Yeah,
that's that was my proposal for the governance team to be administrators of the entire org, and yeah, you can decide.
Let's take that on SIG meeting. Yeah. Good.
Right.
Good job.
Yeah, the next is we discussed about the proofs of concept, and that we want to, have more real life use cases to drive the direction of the next POC. And I just wanted to ask if anyone heard anything about any new use case or any ideas on what we could do to help us get those, so that we get some.
Steve had a use case in mind. I think we documented it on the previous meeting. Something like Jenkins building, Jenkins containerizing, handing over to, I don't remember if it was Argo or something to do something, and then doing something happen. Yeah, you have it there. So Docker build, signature, deploy, and approval gate. It's like line 60. Yeah, 60. So that could be one use. I don't remember, Matthias, I know we talked about 4 keys a long while ago. Is that something that could be a use case as well, or is that sort of a bit in a different scope?
Yeah, I mean, that could be a use case. I mean, it would be pretty defined. That the thing I like with using 4 keys was that it was pretty defined on what they needed in order to produce their metrics. So basically, you already had kind of like, we need this information, so we could just match it. So that was why I thought it was a good idea. So that was a good reminder.
Yeah, because I believe the 4 keys use case is very different from this Jenkins use case, for instance, because in the 4 keys, if I don't remember entirely wrong, that would be more akin to like collecting metrics and stuff like that, which you could also do in an event-based system or with an event protocol, but it wouldn't be like driving a pipeline like this. So being able to show both those use cases, at least in theory, would help show the width or breadth of what you can do with event-based CI/CD.
Yeah.
And one other use case for me is still the remediation use case, which is also actually part of 4 keys. Because if you remember when we had the 4 keys discussion, we also had the topics in the like mean time to resolution. So we need to know that a currently deployed version of a software is having an issue. That's like the problem ops remediation use case, which we currently don't have in the spec.
That's a good point. I mean, for the 4 keys project, we could reach out to the CDF. Tracy, you know that they were in touch with the team on Google side who developed this, and see if they would be interested maybe in joining this meeting and discussing how to make a new version using the events from the CD events.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we could. I mean, the project is open source, so we could just take it and I guess try and change it. But it would make sense to try and get the team who originally wrote the 4 keys project on board.
I mean, it would definitely help us progressing, I guess, if they were be interested, that would help us, I guess. So this sounds interesting.
Okay. So does everyone agree that this is a type of use case that we could pursue?
For me, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, personally, I also like what Eric was saying, that it's a different kind of scenario from the previous POC. So it's not driving the pipeline through components, but it's getting events from multiple components and make sense of them across components. So it's an interesting, it's a different. So if we have this and the previous one, then we have 2 different scenarios and we cover the 2 main areas.
I have another question on the events because I was just looking at the PR that I'd like to briefly discuss.
Yeah, so I just started a document where we can actually have them, so we don't need to search in our agenda meeting notes later on.
Oh, okay.
So I created a Canvas document for the actual use cases.
Oh, that's great. Thanks.
Instead of otherwise, we could have it on the repo in GitHub, but maybe it's quicker to have it in a McKinsey document instead, at least to begin with.
Maybe it could eventually go on the roadmap.
Sure.
All right. Alois, you mentioned a PR related that you want to discuss.
When I look at the events, I actually see 2 entirely different types of event families, categories, whatever you want to call them. You look at like the artifact or entity-based events where we usually have like a created, a modified, a deleted, or updated, which is the same as modified. Where we're not entirely consistent, like we just call them differently. Like for a service, we call it, for example, removed and not deleted. Or not other, we call it updated or rollback and not modified. I think so. This is like the one type of events, and then there are the other more procedural events, like for example, build queued, build started, build finished, test case queues, test case started, test case finished. So I think on the one hand we have activities which we have events for, and more or less state changes of entities. And I wonder whether we should put this in this spec per se, that there's two per se different types of event categories that we have, and then trying to standardize on them. And my question simply was, do we want to do this before we merge the existing state over or after? Because this would be my immediate comment on the existing PR. I'm also fine if we say, let's merge everything over which we have right now to have a state from which we can work, and then starting to work from it. Or we say, well, let's try to get it into the very first version, which we gradually merge over. So this is more a procedural question on how you want to address this.
Sorry, Matthias, you wanted to say something.
Just my thinking is that if I remember correctly from when we had previous discussions, we didn't want the PRs to be too big because we had a lot of comments and it was kind of hard to follow along the discussion. So I think we concluded for them it was better to have like smaller PRs and then you would merge them in. So in that case, I would recommend to merge this as it is, basically. We might need to update the README file, but then we can add on PRs. So we have something there to start with. Does that sound reasonable?
I'm fine either way. I just want to know whatever you want to do, because then I would also act like as an approver for the current version, and then it would create immediately an issue to have like these event categories and then start the PR for it. So I'm fine doing it that way as well. So I don't want to prolong that we have any content in the repo, but I think it's still something importantly we should start to address.
Yes, I think there are a lot of issues that we need to address and a lot of changes that we need to make. So I agree that, so my thought was let's at least have a base version in, and so we can then start doing incremental changes. So if that's okay with you, Alois, we can merge this, and yeah, it sounds great. Get consistency on the naming for the events and identify different groups. That makes a lot of sense.
I think we should just make it in the initial document. I think we have currently a note in there that might be the only change that I request that says, okay, this is currently work in progress, which it actually is, by the events SIG, which actually should be removed as a wording. So you're welcome to join the work and discussion. I would actually say you shouldn't actually yet implement this. I think we should give it like maybe then also an official version number potentially. I think of how we can have like, this is like version 0.01, or at least tag it. I would just let people know, don't implement this yet, because this is like very early stage.
Yes, I thought we marked it as a draft in the title, but maybe I missed that. So yeah, so I didn't even want to give it like a version number to say, okay, this is like a pre-release, so there's no release yet. So, but I think it's a good idea to mark it as please don't implement it yet.
Yeah, I think just a recommendation. This is not yet ready for implementation. It would be useful. Not that I expect that everybody just jumps onto it and implements it right away tomorrow.
Yeah, I think
maybe that should be added as a general comment directly on the README on the top level of the repo within this PR maybe as well. So it's clear when you come to this spec repo that you shouldn't rely on this being as it is today in a future release or a future version.
Okay, yeah, I will update the PR accordingly. Makes sense. Yeah, I need to update the README anyways, which I have not done to add the link to it, and yeah, I'll add a comment. And I think yeah, as soon as we start having something that we think we can release, we should probably defining policies as well in terms of versioning and stability of the spec, and yeah, so that if someone implements it, know what to expect.
Yeah, and I also think that we quite soon need to state somewhere what we want, what we need to have in place to be able to set the first tag of the spec. What details need to be sorted out or something like that before we actually can publish it as a first tagged draft or whatever. It might still be 0. something as a version, but at least an experimental release or something. Because now I think we are looking at multiple different discussions and don't really know which one to prioritize and so on. And if we would have such a, I don't know, charter saying that these things needs to be in place, then we could maybe use that to prioritize the discussions we will have in this protocol meetings.
Yeah. Do we plan to have a versioning MD in there to describe our versioning scheme? Because I'm right now just bluntly, honestly taking stuff over from OpenTelemetry, which has in there like obviously Semver, but also like alpha, beta, and where we say alpha has low guarantees, very high likely to change. Beta, first people starting to actively implement it, release, stable. Because then we could make this actually alpha 1, which makes it pretty clear that this is very likely to change.
I think that sounds like a good idea. So I don't know if you can write maybe an issue or even a pull request to propose that would be great. I think.
Yes, I can do that. Yeah. So yeah. I think we should get the first version in there and then I'll put the issue in there.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, we need to define a policy for the versions. I mean, we can mark them as alpha as well. I mean, the alpha beta stable is a terminology that is used for like Kubernetes type of APIs, usually in the ecosystem. For the spec of this, we might want to use numbers like Semver, but we could associate them. We could say like up to certain only minor versions. So before 1.0, they're considered alpha or not stable, and then once we get to a 1.0, we assume a certain stability policy in place. Anyway, we need to write version policy document for sure.
So looking at Semver, it says that, for example, major versions plus 0 is for initial development. Anything may change at any time. The public application should not be considered stable. That sounds reasonable. That we have it as 0 then.
Okay. Right. Anything else on the versions? Indeed, the next thing that I had in the agenda is going for the discussions. Do we want to do that? Or, I mean, alternatively, we could start working on a roadmap, or we could go through the discussions and try to mark what we think we need to decide before we can do a 0.1.
I guess as a general rule of thumb for setting what we need to decide on before we have a first release or whatever, could be that we should of course intend to have everything that could be backwards incompatible in place directly, so we don't at the beginning already know that these things will probably change. So the things that are very core, I guess, in the protocol should be settled first, I would say. But I think it's a good idea to look at the discussions and see which ones need to be sorted out. That's a good proposal to start there, I think.
Okay, thanks. I don't know, Eric, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've been kind of driving the review of discussions in the past. Do you think you would like to run this part of, or should I just go in the order that they are here?
I guess in general, the discussions that lead to more events being added is less important than discussions leading to what we already have here being changed. As Emil said, we should at least try to make sure that what we already have there, we don't think we need to urgently change it. But yeah, I would be willing to look into that.
Should I stop sharing then? Okay.
Oh, you mean right now? I was a little bit lost.
Oh, yeah, but I can also start looking for these now myself.
Maybe I misunderstood. I was thinking about Emil's comment earlier, like prioritizing discussions that lead to us not needing to make backwards incompatible changes later on. Okay. But when it comes to discussions, I guess the wiki page might still be relevant if we want to look at something right now.
All right. Okay. It's the right place.
Yeah, so this is then in a chronological order. I think yes. There, I think I have an action point actually to look into that. We discussed it last time. I realized I haven't updated this page. I think we discussed it last meeting. Yes. One thing that could be interesting to dig a little bit into is number 28. What is an environment? So that seems like something that could cause issues since we have events already that relate to an environment and we don't have an entirely aligned view on what an environment is.
I'm trying to. So environments are for the kind of continuous deployment type of events. If
I guess environments could also be the base for the build environment or the test environment where things are built or tested. And if it's a cloud or Kubernetes application that you're creating, it's probably a Docker image that is the environment in which something is built, for example. But then as Steve asked in the beginning, that an environment could also be hundreds of containers in a Kubernetes cluster. So the cluster itself could be an environment. in some higher level testing or deployment perspective.
And as I wrote there, for instance, the way Volvo Cars looks at this is when they talk about environment, so say that we have a production continuous delivery setup, and we get teams building software, and we get deliveries from suppliers, and we want to push all that through to get into the actual car. That we would call the production environment. Everything that is involved, all the services, all the servers, all the test environments or test rigs, all that stuff, production. Then separately, we have a development environment where we like test new test cases and test new ways of working with continuous delivery. So those would then be different environments. And then those environments are massive. We're talking like hundreds of test rigs and all on that scale. Whereas if we look at our own continuous deployment event, it seems like an environment is something that you very easily can spin up and bring down again, basically on demand. So at least those two are very different meanings of the term environment. And as long as I don't think it's good to refer to different things as environments in different parts of the spec. So we would have to find different terms for those concepts if we want to support them.
Do we want to have some kind of hierarchy idea here? I'm thinking of if you're having your development environment discussing is actually consisting of other environments.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to define your whole environment and you want to define the other environments inside of it. Because you might want to point to, okay, this test case was run on this specific environment, which might be a hardware or something. So you might want that, but you also want to show that, okay, these environments are part of something bigger.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess in AFED you would cover this through domains, is that correct? Or the broader major things could be different domains, whereas the smaller things would be environments as defined by AFED.
Maybe AFED is not too good at it. Yeah, continue.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that domains, at least not how we use AFED in Ericsson with domains, but it's rather I would say a composition of other environments, or in AFED terms, it would rather be a composition than that is like a group of things that you can group together, I think.
So compositions can contain
but I mean, in AFED, we haven't really got those hierarchical environments in a good way.
Yeah, I would actually also ask some other approaches how they are modeling it, like how people model it in, say, things like cross-plane and other type of definition languages, or even how some of the HashiCorp people used to model these kind of things, and then also how CD tools model them if they actually even need them.
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea. We should maybe try and collect, have a look what are the platforms that talk about environments and how do they model them.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, because there, I think, as you said, Eric, there is a very large variety of environments, from the very ephemeral ones to the more like long-running or persistent ones. And I mean, you might refer to those in a consistent way, but I guess the type of events that you will have are very different. Like if you have a long-running environment, it makes sense to track what has been deployed there, what has been updated there. Like if you have your production environment, you could be interested if something has been deployed or rolled back. But if you have your test environment, which is, I don't know, a Kubernetes cluster that you deploy as part of your CI job, I don't think it's very relevant to know that something has been deployed there, because it's just something that's been set up for the purpose of something being installed to it, and then it's going to be teared down. So it's probably very different type of events that you want for different type of different type of environments.
But I guess you can also listen to these environment events, for example, that if you want to wait for your environment to be set up before you run a test or something. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, but in that case, it would be an event about the environment being ready, so kind of provisioning and deprovisioning of the environments.
But I also think it's good that you talked about look at other tools and see if we can use at least like what the wording they're using there. We can borrow in that, or maybe even borrow in some structure or something.
Let me take some notes. The other question I would have for environments is that relevant for the use cases that we want to deal? I guess if we are tackling the 4 keys, it probably is. If you want to track deployments to an environment, at least, it's more of a deployment type of event. It's not, but the environment, I guess, is part of the metadata that is in that event. Just trying to understand if that's something that we need to prioritize or solve to implement the PSC.
If I remember the 4 keys product correct, I could be wrong. I don't think that they actually required requirements to get them started, but I could be wrong.
There was a mention of environments in the initial POC that we made. But yeah, I think there we refer to an environment just by name.
Yeah, I think it was added there to as there were many people coming from like a cloud or had a cloud idea, and there it makes sense to actually, that you deploy something and you create an environment that is a runnable image or something and deploy it. So that's why they wanted to have environment in, I guess.
Oh, it's 5 already. Okay, I guess we are at time. I hope this was useful. Maybe for the next time we can try and to bring some thoughts on how to ensure that the discussion is, yeah, if we feel that the structure of meeting is working, or if we, yeah, how we can focus the discussion to make sure we make the most progress.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Cool. All right, then I'll see you in 1 week or 2 weeks at the latest, then in the next vocabulary meeting.
Yep.
Have a nice week.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for today, Andrea. Thank you all.